everyone, I am Zazubaar, and welcome back to our monthly mini-series that we have been doing, that we started last month, of the Godzilla Odyssey Retrospective, which is, of course, taking us on a journey as Godzilla goes on his journey throughout the multiverse of different fictional franchises that we attempted to recount in a fanfiction series that we wanted to post monthly on fanfiction.net. We never fucking finished it because, well, we're getting into that with this series, so just, wait a couple minutes and we'll tell you. But we got the first two issues done, and we did the first issue. We talked about it in the first installment of this series. We did that one last month, so you can go back to that one to get all the background for this series and hear our thoughts on the first issue that we did.
You should.
In that,
it's a good video. I just re-listened to it last night in preparation for this video, actually.
There you go. Approval by the man who was in it. So that ought to tell you something,
Yes.
or tell you nothing, depending on your viewpoint on life.
I was, of course, the best part.
Presumably so, as in all things. So, Dillion, in this great journey of Godzilla's through the multiverse that we never fucking finished recounting as fanfiction writings, what is Godzilla's next stop as we enter the second issue of Godzilla Odyssey, which was the name of the series that I don't even think I've mentioned yet?
Well, actually, before we get into that, I wanted to mention something that we forgot to mention last time, and that is something about the way this show is released, the mechanics of all this. So if you are subscribed to the actual Godzilla Odyssey Facebook page, you will have access to these retrospective videos an entire day early, because it will be in private on YouTube in a playlist for one day prior to its being released to the public, and that link will only be shared on that Facebook page. So if you want to get all these retrospective videos a day earlier than everyone else on YouTube, you can go follow that page. The reason being that this show really was made for the fans of Godzilla Odyssey. So it's
for the people who, because that page was getting viewed and liked, and we talked about this last time, long after we canceled the series, and we felt bad that that people were still giving a shit and we were providing no new content. So this was partially done for them. So that's why I decided to do it that way.
So yeah, if you want to find out about all this shit a day early, every month, then go subscribe. Not subscribe. Go.
Go like.
That's it. That's what you do.
There's a big thumbs up. Well, technically you're following the page, but you start out by liking it and then you follow.
That's what you do on the Facebooks.
Right. That's how the books of faces work.
Go do that.
You motherfucker. No.
Yeah,
So Dillion,
yeah, we don't have like a Godzilla Odyssey Twitter. Okay, we're very 2000 and late around here. So exactly. go do the Facebooks.
Indeed. Go back to the Book of Faces. We're gonna make a MySpace page soon, so go look out for that soon. We're gonna release that. We're gonna release this show on there a full 2 days. We're gonna release this show a full 2 days early on there.
I only have one friend named Steve.
Tom, you mean?
Oh, Tom. That's it. It was Tom.
Oh, you fucked it up, Dillion. You fucked up that joke from 2006.
Tom, I've always got you.
Tom unfriend you. He did to some people too. That was the fucked up thing.
Fuck Piccolo. Maybe I want my one friend to be named Steve.
Fair enough. Well, you got to find a friend named Steve. Dillion, do you have a friend named Steve?
No, damn it.
I didn't fucking think so. So, fuck you. So, I think I just heard my dad downstairs tell me to stop cursing, which is hilarious. Dillion, so let's be a little more wholesome then. Dillion, so you wrote the second issue of Godzilla Odyssey as opposed to me writing the first one. I'm sure everybody's relieved.
This is the month where we get to have all the blame on me and me alone.
Thank God. My shoulders could only take so much, so we're going to bequeath that to you, Dillion. To your slightly less exhausted, less fatigued shoulders. So, Dillion, tell us where you took Godzilla in issue 2 of Godzilla Odyssey. What fictional franchise did he do battle with in this instance?
In issue 2 of Godzilla Odyssey, Godzilla visits a franchise that we here on the Demons from Outer Space, and not just on the show, but I mean we in general, are known for speaking of, and that is, of course, the Dragon Ball Z franchise.
Eee! Now, Dillion, one thing I think I forgot to mention last time that was not important because it really had nothing to do with the background of the show, but I just kind of wanted to mention it for my own sake, was that I did a video many years ago, before I even did my Godzilla Palooza, called Top 5, my own Top 5 not to be Godzilla fights.
Yes, I remember that one, yes.
which were 5 characters or just franchises that I wanted Godzilla to cross over with, but I knew would never be done officially. And I wanted to bring it up in the last video because something that only occurred to me today was Godzilla. That list contains all the characters and franchises on that list are in this series. So I know that's a bit of a spoiler for later, but I just wanted to bring that up now because I don't know if there was any discussion of, going back to that video and pulling from that, or I don't even remember if it was in the back of my head when we came up with this series. But I definitely find it interesting, and it definitely makes
Well,
sense that we put those franchises on our short list for stuff we wanted to put in this series.
I think it was mentioned during the planning. I think we both remembered that list that you had made at the time. Um, However, the idea of crossing him over with Dragon Ball Z, while you had expressed it in your list, it was something.
Oh yeah, this was a story you'd wanted. I don't want. I'm not trying to take the credit away from you. I hope that's not what you think.
No, no,
I
no,
just
no.
wanted to. I was bringing that up as a separate thing because you're right. You had this idea long before Odyssey was even.
What I'm saying is I don't recall whether that list factored into the decision to put any of the franchises on in this series that
Right.
are in
I
this
don't
series.
remember
All
either.
I can
Yeah.
recall is that
I just find it interesting that I did that video and then we ended up doing
all
this.
all I know for sure is that it wasn't the reason behind this particular one. Perhaps some of the others. Perhaps number 6 maybe.
I think 6 was a direct. I think 6 was a direct consequence of my list because that one
I'm
was like.
remembering what 6 was. Let me open my notes again.
I think 6 was the. No,
Don't say it all.
no, it was 7, right?
Hold on.
If we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
It's related to what we talked about on DFOS last week.
and you just blew the load. Well done. Well fucking. No,
Well, when this comes out, it won't be referring to last week's DFOS. So
that's right. They can figure it out.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Spoilerific. Yeah, it's number 6. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure that one was pulled directly from your list.
yeah. Well, the other thing is too. That one was like I had to do that one because it's been something I wanted to see since I was a kid, which I think was a big part of this particular issue with you was
which
that.
makes it even more hilarious that we never finished.
Yeah, definitely. But this issue 2, Godzilla crossing over with DBZ, this is something that you had always wanted to do. Now, the story that you ended up
It's the
telling
sort of
was
thing
it
also that I never would have actually done had it not been for us coming up with this whole Godzilla Odyssey framework.
right? Yeah,
Because the problem with crossing DBZ over with anything is that it
yeah.
just, on so many levels, it just doesn't fucking work. And if we hadn't come up with this framework of Godzilla Odyssey that allowed us to cross Godzilla over with literally anything and have it make at least a modicum of sense, I probably never would have actually uh, written a Godzilla v Goku story. And
Right.
and most of the Godzilla v Goku stories on fanfiction.net tend to just be Godzilla v Goku with no backstory whatsoever, and naturally that's not what I intended to do.
Because at that point, it's like it's a punching match between two really powerful people and there's no context around it. And I find that those kind of stories where they're literally just about the fight, uh, tend to just be like there's no paralleling between the characters, and that's something that we were very, very interested in when it came to doing this. Was if we're gonna cross Godzilla over with these characters, we don't just want it to be punching matches. We also want to do a little bit of like, well, this is what this character is about. This is what Godzilla's about. It might be kind of cool to see how they clash with those two ideas, motivating them as well as just well, this guy's really strong and this guy's really strong, and they don't like each other for some reason, so they're gonna punch each other.
Yeah,
Uh,
it
so
couldn't just
that was a big part of it as well.
it couldn't just be Godzilla and Goku walk into a bar and then they fight. Like there had to be some sort of a setup, and I think Godzilla Odyssey finally gave the perfect setup. The only real setup that I can possibly imagine, honestly. I can't if I was going to write a Godzilla v DBZ crossover without the Godzilla Odyssey framework, I can't even imagine what it would be. Cross him over with any superhero and it's super easy. He shows up, he attacks the city, and the superhero comes and is like, "Oh, I got to save the city." Super easy. DBZ is a whole other animal.
Well, I think the problem with DBZ is a bit of the same problem as the other superhero stuff, but it's more so with DBZ in that it's hard to make Godzilla already exist in the Dragon Ball universe
Right.
because it's such a distinctive world. It's so very different from our own. Godzilla is so reactionary to the state of our real world. And I mean, Godzilla movies are fantastic in nature, but they're always very reactionary to the state of the culture and the state of the political uh, relationships between Japan and other countries.
They don't
That
even.
it's hard to fix. It's hard to work Godzilla into that. The only way I ever saw to do it was that I always presumed that Dragon Ball took place in the far future, and like to a point where it was kind of like the past. Like it started to look like the past. In its own future sense, like fantasy and technology became so linked for that reason. Magic and technology, I mean. Uh, that you could just say that there was a 1950s Godzilla existed at that time, a version of the Showa Godzilla universe happened, and it was just so long ago nobody talks about it now. But that's flaky. That's kind of fucking with the uniqueness of Dragon Ball.
Well, the only problem with that
So
is the Dragon Ball Z world um, has like a map, like, and it's totally different from Earth. Um,
right, that too.
I actually
Yeah.
used the map. Actually, I'm gonna share it with you through Skype right now. I actually used this map while writing the story. I don't know if you want to
Oh yeah,
check
no,
it out.
I'd love to take a look. I haven't seen a map of the Dragon Ball world since I played Budokai 3 as a kid. So,
Yeah.
which is probably yeah, no, this definitely makes sense. Yeah.
So there you have West City, where the battle at the end takes place. Spoilers. Godzilla pops up.
As well as the title fucking tells you.
The Godzilla pops up at the beginning of the story. Somewhere to the east of there, I just like invented a small village because the Dragon Ball universe is full of small villages that nobody's ever heard of or gives a fuck about. I mean, if you read the story and you look at this map if you refer back to this map as you're reading the story, you can kind of get a sense of like where all the characters are at this
Where is West City? I don't even see it.
at the start of things, and then they converge.
Oh, I got it. I see it.
It's in the west.
Well, I looked in the west and I didn't see it, but then it was tucked in between Ginger and Parsley City.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not in the far west. It's part of like the main continent where all four of those cities are: North City, West City, East City. I don't see a South City. Oh yeah, South City's actually down
yeah,
here.
it's South City's on like the Australia
Yeah,
of the Dragon Ball world.
the Australia looking motherfucker. Yeah.
Earth looks bizarre, like it's one giant Pangea landmass.
Yeah.
I'm assuming there has to be more to it though, because there's an American flag in Dragon Ball.
Right.
So I'm assuming that they're at the very and there's Nazis in well, that's in a movie, so who knows? But so I do think that there has to be more land to it than this,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But who knows? Dragon Ball is its own. Dragon Ball is such its own thing, and it's written by Akira Toriyama, who infamously gives no fucks. So
Also, the map doesn't help you out with like the movies, because like I'm thinking of World's Strongest right now. I have no idea where the Scooby Dooby Mountains are or whatever the fuck they're called. Like I'm looking.
I think Janzabit Heights
No,
is supposed.
that's where Yunzabit Heights is where Kami's spaceship was hidden.
Oh, that's right. That's the really cold mountainy place. That's not where Goku and Vegeta fought, even though it looks exactly like it.
Yeah.
Right, gotcha. So, Dylan, just to get back to what we were saying though, what ideas did you have before we actually what ideas did you translate from potential ideas you had for this kind of crossover, into this story that you ended up writing, or was it just you knew we were doing this and you came up with something from the ground up?
Well,
Because for mine, I definitely had like an idea to go from prior to us even coming up with this. I already kind of had like a basic kind of, well, here are some disparate Godzilla fan fictions I've been wanting to write. I'm just gonna kind of mix them together into this.
yeah. Well, this is so weird. I've never like discussed my own work on recording before. Anyway, I had
It's a
like
little weird, right? Yeah.
I had like basic ideas of just stuff I always thought would be cool in like a Godzilla versus DBZ like fight scenario. Like I've always wanted to see Godzilla versus Giant Piccolo. I've always wanted
Yeah.
Piccolo to use his size changing abilities again. The fact that he never uses it again over the course of the series is insane, especially in the Lord Slug movie. That could have come in handy. But
Wasn't he down at that point though when Slug grew?
yeah, he might have already been down. I don't remember.
I think he was down at that
I'd have to
point.
give it another watch. But still, there are so many opportunities throughout the series that he could just grow giant and step on a few people. Resurrection F.
Wouldn't it have
It
been
would have
cool if
come
he
in.
would have fought Uzaru Gohan
Yeah, I mean,
or Uzaru Vegeta or anybody? Yeah.
like he could have wrestled Uzaru Gohan to the ground. Instead, he like wasted time running away until he realized it was the moon and he blew it up when he could have very easily defeated him. I don't understand why he never uses this fucking power. Resurrection F. If he had used that during the battle scene, it would have been the greatest thing of all time. So
That would have been cool.
So yeah, I've always wanted to see him use that again. So I always knew that I wanted to put that in here, and then just other little stuff like that. And then in terms of an actual story, that sort of grew out of using the Odyssey framework to work off of. Particularly, the first challenge that I had was choosing a point within the DBZ timeline to put this, because
Right. We talked a lot about that.
if you put it at the very, because there's not a lot of spaces, because you could put it like when they're training for the Saiyans, but then Goku wouldn't be alive, and then what would be the point? Plus, everybody's way too weak at that point to even contend with Godzilla, I think.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely. Especially this one, which has sort of like a mishmash of like all the strongest elements of Godzilla's power level sort of given our own consistency.
yeah, I wrote him basically like Final Wars Goji with GMK regenerative powers. Um, even more so exaggerated than that, even. Um,
Yeah, I do want to talk about that, but we'll get to all that when we start talking about details.
yeah. But what was I talking about? Fuck. But yeah,
We were
that
you were talking about disparate elements you kind of worked in.
that was the other problem. Like I couldn't put it like at the very beginning of the series. I mean, then your principal characters would be alive, but again, they would all be too weak at that point. You wouldn't get any Vegeta, and who wants that? Um,
Yeah, certainly.
and then
Nobody.
and then you
Nobody I can think of.
and then the only other option would be putting it after the Buu saga. And I'm sorry, but Godzilla, the idea of Godzilla having to contend with like Super Saiyan 3 Goku at that point, it tips in the total opposite scale, and it would be completely unbelievable for him to even hold his own. I think, um,
Well, I think it depends because
especially
well, I don't.
given what we saw happen to Hirudegarn.
That's fair. I guess that's fair. Although I would say that Godzilla might have a better chance. And I think you're giving him credit for because at that point Goku couldn't control the Super Saiyan 3,
Mm,
so he probably wouldn't be able to sustain it for very long, particularly against that strong of an opponent. Though Godzilla killing Boo, I mean, I'm sorry, Goku being the one who kills Boo, or at least being the one who uses the attack, because technically it's the energy of the entire Earth killing Boo.
right.
Um, at that point, then yeah, you're right. It's a bit like
Well, even
Godzilla could theoretically destroy the planet, but not without also killing himself, and that's where I think the distinction comes in.
even after like post Cell games, once you get Super Saiyan 2, I think the scales tip way too far in the DBZ direction, where it just wouldn't be an interesting fight at that point. I so
But even with Super Saiyan 2, though, because in this you bring up how, because the issue with fighting Godzilla that Goku brings up is that Godzilla's going to outlast them because his power reserves seem unlimited, and I mean they're not, but they're more self-replenishing
right.
the Z fighters are.
From his perspective, also Godzilla just got a huge power up at the end of issue 1.
Right, exactly. So that definitely makes sense. But I think that the Super Saiyan 2 would just make them able to more like keep their energy reserves going longer because they've got another tap of power to go into. So
Right.
I think that that's all that would do. I think that Super Saiyan 3 and beyond is when you start to get into trouble for Godzilla. Obviously Super Saiyan 4 no chance, Super Saiyan God no chance.
Yeah.
Even
Of course,
Gogeta I don't think Godzilla has a chance against.
of course, this was written pre-Super, so um,
Oh yeah, once you get into Super, obviously we're not even like
pre battle
Krillin could probably beat Godzilla now, but
pre Battle of Gods, which is why the multiverse functions in a completely different way. Although I could possibly justify it. I'll get into that later when we talk about that shit. But
I mean, you could say that it's one of the seven. I mean, who knows? We wrote this
well,
pre Super,
we've
so
got a series where there are infinite universes, and then Dragon Ball comes out and says, "Oh, there are only 12," although it was recently revealed that there were originally 18, and the Omni King destroyed 6 of them. Uh,
oh, interesting.
um, but um, but I'll talk about that later because I have a spiel. Um,
Okay.
but what I was talking about right now, ultimately I settled on the fact that there was only one place that I could do it, and that was the what is it, a 3 year span where they're training for the androids. It's 3 years, right?
Mm,
3 years.
3 years. Now,
And I did it like 1 year into that span.
hmm now, do you remember what exactly made us go DBZ is the second issue? Was it because you were just so ready to write it, um, or and like really into that idea, or was it because, or did we have any other reason aside from that? Because I don't remember. It's
I
although I
think
do. I think it was because you were kind of like, I really want to write that, and I really wanted to write the Showa Godzilla crossover. So we did those two first because they were the two that we most wanted to write.
yeah, I
But
think
I
I
don't
had a
precisely
clearer
remember it.
I think I had a clearer idea in my head of what I wanted to do with that than I did with any of the other ideas that we had on the list, and so
Definitely.
it just made the most sense to write that one next. Although I wound up finishing it before you finished the first issue.
Yeah, which I think we can probably start getting into now then. So, backstory of actually creating this one then was that we came up with the idea, we planned out the outline of it, we had all of the, if I remember correctly, we had most of the rough notes and everything all together for the entire series. We knew the sort of overarching story. I think we had all the crossovers we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sat down to write the first two issues because we were writing those two separately, so we wrote them, well, the idea was to write them simultaneously and then release them 1 month after the other.
I
And
remember I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to do with issue 5, but that was always supposed to come in the middle of the series.
right,
So I started working on this one first.
right, right. Now, so let's talk about the fact that you ended up writing issue 2 before I finished issue 1 and before you even read issue 1. And I don't mean like you finished it like a little bit before I finished issue 1. You finished issue 2 way before I ever finished
Because
issue
I
1.
had no idea it was going to take you as long as it did, as it did,
Yeah,
and so I thought, okay,
fair enough.
I'm just gonna get started because he's working on issue 1, so wouldn't hurt to go ahead and get started, and uh,
And it's funny.
and then it turned
I
out like, hey, Bill, I'm done with mine. Where's yours?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I have the first 6 pages and nothing else. Godzilla hasn't even gotten to the other universe yet.
34
Um
pages later.
yeah. And I think it ended up working out okay because we obviously talked a lot, and I had issue 1 pretty much like what was going to happen, the major continuity that would affect this story pretty much planned out. So it wasn't really that big of a deal.
And we
It
had
was just
already
sort of
and we had already decided that I was going to start introducing all of the interdimensional stuff that was going on with the hierarchy and all that. We had already decided to start introducing that in issue 2 because we wanted to sort of drop people into issue 1 cold without all of that explanation. And so
yeah.
I already knew that I was going to be doing that in issue 2. So that wasn't a problem.
Right, and I also think that worked really well. That idea of dropping people in cold because it gets them used to the idea of Godzilla traveling around the multiverse first, which is a big leap from your typical Godzilla story anyway. So I think it's good to have that happen first, and then introducing a new race and a whole new multi-dimensional, essentially political system was an end unto itself. And I think we sort of thought that it made more sense to introduce that separately from Godzilla's little tour throughout the multiverse. So I think that was probably a thing that we did for the best. I do think what we should have done, and this is just criticizing the both of us, was planned out better. And it works fine here just because we were just introducing it, but we didn't plan out enough where certain things about the hierarchy and what Unicles was going to be doing in each issue in advance enough. Because I feel like there is certainly I think there's an uncertainty on your part as to what exactly Unicles is supposed to be set up to be doing
Mm-hmm.
in this, because it was just kind of like, well, we have to introduce the hierarchy because we need. Well, the idea was we needed a human, somewhat of a human protagonist to follow through this adventure because we get somebody for the characters that Godzilla is going to be fighting, crossing into their universes to interact with, who knows what's going on with the rest of the story, and that was important to us. So that was the point of this interdimensional police officer, essentially.
Right.
And
The only
uh
thing I knew for sure, because I had the hierarchy give him this mission, the only thing I knew for sure was that he was supposed to attempt to reduce collateral damage, because that's a huge concern that the hierarchy has. Godzilla's traveling from dimension to dimension, and it's just really screwing up the order of things. And so he's trying, because they don't really know how they're gonna stop this thing from happening. So all he's really doing at this point in time is sort of following Godzilla around from universe to universe and trying to prevent things from going too badly.
yeah, and I do think that we also should have had more discussions about a couple of things along the lines of what the hierarchy can and can't do. Why can't they just use some kind of technology? They seem super advanced, obviously. Why can't they just return Godzilla to his home dimension? Why can't they just stop the ultimate villain of the series? I don't think that we had enough planned out in terms of what they were capable of and what their ultimate goal was in regards to Godzilla. And I do think that uncertainty is reflected here. I don't think it's a problem though for this story because obviously the person reading it isn't really the only problem I think it is like that crops up for the reader is that they potentially feel like, well, what's the deal with this? And it feels a bit like, it doesn't feel superfluous, obviously, because Euclides does end up being the one who kind of incites the ending, but it definitely feels a bit kind of dropped in like it's a bit at odds with everything else. It feels a bit like the Red Bamboo and the Japanese military in the first issue, where it's sort of like, I get why this is here, but like I'm not sure why exactly we're cutting back to it so much and what its ultimate purpose serves, you know? But again, I don't, that's not your fault writing it. That's just the fact that we didn't plan out enough what its ultimate purpose was and how it was going to play into the story overall, and even in this particular instance. So I do definitely think that's something that we should do when we take another crack at this next time. But why don't we just delve into the actual into the story itself, and actually, you know, reviewing it, as it were.
Right.
So, do you want to start off
Doing what?
reviewing the first issue with your kind of overall thoughts of how it holds up now, 2 years later after writing it, or is there anything else you wanted to add about actually creating it at the time? And did you want us to get us into your mindset back in 2014 when you wrote this anymore?
Well, ultimately, the main goal, the thing that I strive to do, to whatever degree of success, I wanted to capture the feel of DBZ. I wanted it to feel as if you were watching a DBZ movie that you never knew existed before, you know? And I think I pulled that off relatively well. I think
I completely agree. Yeah.
I think it definitely feels like you're in that universe, and ultimately that was the main goal for me, because this is the first time. Because with the first issue, he was crossing a universe, yes, but he was crossing into a different version of his own thing. This is the first time we actually see him like pop up in a totally foreign universe where nothing is as it was where he's from, and so I really just, my main focus was trying to make sure that things felt, you know what I mean. I wanted to capture the feel of DBZ.
You wanted to get the tone right.
Yeah.
And have it so the tone of Godzilla could clash with the tone of DBZ.
The tone,
because that's where you want that interesting contrast that we talked about at the beginning, that parallel.
The tone, character voices is a huge thing, because DBZ characters are so unique and are so their own thing that if you're off even by a little bit, it can be a real problem. Just, you know, shit like that.
Definitely.
That's all I can really say as far as trying to get people into my mindset while writing it. If anything else comes up, if I think of anything else while we're reviewing it, I'll interject about the writing process. But yeah, I guess we can just get into talking about the actual damn thing.
Well, if I may just say one thing though, you also and you mentioned this at the time. I think you just mentioned it again in passing. You made an attempt to make this feel like a DBZ movie more than like an arc of the show, which obviously makes a lot more sense than making it feel like an arc, because
it has to be short and self-contained,
and also this is a sort of, it's a status quo break, but it's an in the moment, like, this is an emergency situation. This isn't like a building threat that we're slowly dealing with and slowly building up to. This is an emergency situation that we have to respond to, which is a lot more in line with the movies.
Right. There's quite a bit of collateral damage, and
there's a lot of collateral damage, and I wanted to talk about that at the beginning. But I think that you did a really good job of capturing the feel of a DBZ movie, and I think also using the template of a movie as opposed to either even just a filler episode of the show, which you could have also done. You could have just made this feel like a really short episode that just told a quick one-and-done story. You could have made this feel like the Garlic Jr. mini arc, where it was sort of like, it was a bit more of a decompressed, of a decompressed narrative, but still, you know, rather self-contained and rather small, as as opposed to like your Cell Saga or whatever.
The Garlic Jr. saga to me feels like you get like the Peter Jackson director's cut of like a DBZ movie. Like, it's just it's just a DBZ movie stretched out into like 4 VHS tapes worth of DBZ.
I just saw Dylan look at his shelf to count that. That was funny. But yeah, definitely. I think you were very successful, and it was smart to play with those tropes as well, because those movies are infamous for having a bit of a field day with Dragon Ball Z's rules and everything.
Yeah.
And you definitely played with that a bit in this to compensate for the DBZ warrior for the Z fighters fighting Godzilla. So I think it was smart to work in that template as well for that
At one
reason.
point, I came to a point where I was like, you know what, fuck it. Akira Toriyama doesn't give a shit about the rules in DBZ. Anytime he needs to bend the rules to fit the story that he's trying to tell at the moment, he does it. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't even care about like the colors that he makes the characters. Like the whole Trunks' hair being blue thing in Super now, everybody's like, oh, why is it blue? His hair's never been consistent. Like in the show, it was always
At
purple.
one point it was gray, and at one point it was
In the
a
sh-
little bit less gray.
in the show, it's always been pretty consistent his hair color. But you look at like the old colored manga chapters, not the new ones they've been releasing, but the ones from back in the day, and sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's gray, sometimes it's purple. It's never fucking right. There's one point where he's fighting Cell and he's in his Super Saiyan form and his hair's fucking red at one point. It's it's true. It's fucking weird.
I did not know that. I've only ever read Dragon Ball Z in black and white. I read the first issue of Dragon Ball, or the first chapter of Dragon Ball. It was never an issue. Is in color, and Bulma's hair is purple in that,
Yeah,
which is
yeah. That was another
what
thing.
you say Trunks' hair became later on. But I've never seen any evidence to support
As
that.
I described it in the story, a dull lavender sheen.
Right.
Um,
Indeed. So Dylan, if we made since we were to talk about Trunks, I kind of wanted to start there since that's the biggest one of the biggest continuity sort of shakeups that you made was changing
that was the other thing. That was the other reason that I was excited to set it in the point in the timeline when I did is I got to use Future Trunks, and I love that
yeah.
about it. I didn't even plan on having this opening, the opening that the story has, until I realized, oh shit, I get to use Future Trunks, and then I sort of
Mm-hmm.
wrote him in that way. Um,
And I love cold openings like that, and I love this cold opening because it's interesting that you decided to open this. I would say that this story is more from the Dragon Ball Z universe's perspective than Godzilla's, as I think in the first issue it's a bit of an even keel, but I would say that issue is more from Godzilla's perspective,
right.
which I think works
There are
because that's
certainly
the introduction.
there are certainly times where I switch to Godzilla's perspective, but
Oh, I mean, yeah, there are entire paragraphs where it's from his point of view, where we get his descriptions of the Z fighters, which is awesome.
yeah,
Uh,
I had a lot of fun
but
with that.
uh, but it starts out from the Dragon Ball Z character's point of view, and by and large, it remains there. Which again I think works because the first issue is so much from Godzilla's point of view, and I don't think there's a lot to. I don't think you could have done a lot more to add from his point of view as opposed to his confusion and his anger. So
And that
I think you did a good job of making that work.
and the initial idea that I have, writing a DBZ movie essentially couldn't have been done if I had gone too much into his point of view. I really had to tell it from the DBZ characters' points of view. And really, I mean, why wouldn't you want to? They're great characters. um,
Well, yeah, and also you have such a big cast to work with, and so many different, as you said, different types of characters.
yeah,
That it's kind of you would be remiss to not kind of give them a lot more of the spotlight, especially since this is the only time you're ever going to get to write them in this store. We're going to get to write Godzilla every time, so why not focus on them a bit more? I do think that that's definitely something we should pay attention to in the future. Is not letting the other universe outshine Godzilla, because I think that's important. I think they need to be sort of even keel, where we need to keep the focus on Godzilla's interactions with that universe
right.
and not let that other universe overbear Godzilla's place in the story. Because
That's why I tried.
I think that even kind of happened last time too, where I got so preoccupied with writing the Showa universe that it kind of stole some light away from Godzilla at some points.
Well, and I knew that was a potential problem. That's why I always made sure to play around with the Z fighters, trying their best to defeat Godzilla, but just being up against not necessarily the most powerful foe they've ever faced, but just a foe that is so unlike anything they've ever faced before that from a strategic point of view, they don't really know what to do. um, every
Oh yeah,
every
definitely.
time they think they've got him, he pops out of a plume of smoke and comes down again.
Exactly. And I love the way you played with that. But before you get to that, so we didn't even really mention it yet though. The big DBZ continuity thing you messed with is that in DBZ, the way time travel works is that instead of every time you change something in the past, the future is altered. Every time you change something in the past, when you time travel, it creates an alternate dimension
Right.
where where time moves differently, which is already conflicting with other DBZ canon. So it's not even like the fact that you messed with that by having Trunks' time be altered by Godzilla's presence in the past.
Right.
Uh, because Toriyama already fucked with that now with the 12 universe thing, because that already doesn't line up. Although maybe that's supposed to be alternate timeline as opposed to
Yeah, that's
alternate
the thing. That's
reality.
the thing. It's the difference between an alternate universe and an alternate timeline.
Who
Um,
knows?
really, and I mean, I had to try not to get all Star Trekky and just start plopping exposition into this story.
Because that would have been unnecessary. I think it's fine the way it is. It's
You
it's
you
just
could say that since because the leader of the hierarchy even has a point where like Godzilla traveling from universe to universe isn't just him popping up and having a little field day and then leaving. He's like doing damages. He's doing damage to the way like the whole multiverse works, and it could just be that by nature of the way he enters their universe, he sort of fucks with the whole way that the time travel works while he's there. Um,
yeah, because they're very clear about the fact that beings crossing from dimension to dimension doesn't happen very often. Now, I do think when we rewrite this, we should make it seem like it has happened before. Because in this, the way you write it, it sounds like it's never happened before.
mm.
I don't know if I don't know if that really makes sense, especially with the franchises we're
No,
having
no,
him
no, no.
cross with.
The big thing that shocks Euclides is finding out that he actually escaped from limbo by some means.
Right, right.
That's the major thing. I don't know if I made that clear enough. It's not so much the fact that he's
No, you're right. I
like
do remember a point where they were like,
like the
this
fact
doesn't,
like the fact that he's traveling between the universes is certainly extraordinary, and that's certainly something to raise an eyebrow at. But the thing that really is baffling, it's supposed to be baffling, is that he was in limbo and got out, which is something that is never supposed to be able to happen.
Right, exactly. And we made a big deal out of that in the first issue too. So I like that there's a reaction to that here. That's a nice bit of continuation from that. But I don't mind, what you changed in terms of the DBZ canon, and I think that the hierarchy's reaction to Godzilla does make sense. But the only other thing I wanted to say in regards to DBZ canon, I know that we're kind of jumping all over the place, but I wanted to bring this up now before I forget. There is a massive DBZ continuity thing that you fucked up. I don't know if maybe you picked it out now going back to reread this, but when Vegeta pops up in the battle to fight Godzilla, Trunks calls him dad, and Vegeta's totally like unfazed by that. But you got to remember that he didn't find out that Trunks was his son until he returned from space and was a Super Saiyan and they fought the androids.
Ah, you're right. You're right.
Because there's that moment where he's like, he's got the same name as my son, and Trunks hadn't even been born yet at this point. So
Right, right. I didn't think of that. I'll have to make a note of that. That's something I'll have to edit.
that leapt out at me when I read it this time, and I was like, oh, that doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
didn't even think about it the first time.
And again, I know we're kind of jumping all over the place, but I also don't know if Vegeta's really necessary in this story. I know why you wanted to
Oh,
put him in and why you did.
he's in there because I couldn't not have him.
I know, I know, and I'm totally fine with that. It doesn't bother me at all. It's for novelty's sake, and this whole series is for novelty's sake. So who cares?
And I gave him something to
But
do. It wasn't a lot, but
yeah,
something to do.
right. But he didn't necessarily like do anything for the actual climax, and he just kind of shows up at the end and just sort of distracts Godzilla for a minute. So I don't know. I liked, but I did like that you put him in there as well, because one thing that you and I have always wanted to see from the Dragon Ball universe that has never really been addressed is the state of Frieza's empire. I mean, no, it has been addressed now with Resurrection F, but
Right.
the state of Frieza's empire
Which I'm
after his
so
death.
happy. What I wrote in this actually lines up pretty well with Resurrection F.
Yeah, it works out fine, definitely.
Finally, something
Uh,
something in the new continuity that doesn't fuck with my fan fiction. Huzzah.
exactly. That's the beautiful thing about what Toriyama has done for you. Uh, uh, but I do really like that. I like the idea of a lot of Frieza's soldiers aren't even really aware of what happened. Like that's cool. I enjoy that.
Or what he says is that they had heard about it, but they never believed it. Like,
Right. But like they're so sketchy because it's like
and
that
I
makes
and even
sense.
though this,
Nobody was there. Nobody saw the fight. Like everything would be hearsay. Like a lot of the stuff that I would be interested to see how a lot of the stuff that happens in Dragon Ball is remembered, because so little of it happens around people who are watching except for the Z fighters, and they don't tell anybody about it. They keep it all secret.
now, okay, so here's something I snuck in there. I don't know if you even caught it, but I want to ask you if it was a problem. Even
All right.
though I went through all the trouble of like picking a point in the timeline to put this in and making sure that it took place like in the show's continuity, I slid a cooler reference in there.
Yeah, I did
just
notice the cool
I just
reference.
stuck it in there because I couldn't not. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't
Yeah.
not have him in there.
And
Um,
of course, cooler doesn't really work in the traditional DBZ canon, but dude,
no,
it's fine.
but neither does
It works well enough, so it's
neither
fine.
does the entirety of the Garlic Jr. saga. So
Right, exactly. No, you're definitely. I'm with you. I'm totally fine with that. I don't think that's a problem at all.
I didn't think about it.
I mean, as a cooler fan, I like it. So I would have been mad at you if you wouldn't have put it in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Uh,
if I just said him and his father are both dead, but I included
right.
and his brother, and I was like, yes, got it in.
But since we are talking about issues, because I don't have a lot to bring up, so I'll just get all mine out of the way so we can start talking about what I really like about it. Because I like this quite a bit more than I like my first issue, simply because of the simplicity of it, and because I think you took the idea that I sort of talked about being what should have been my idea last time in terms of just dropping Godzilla in and letting the other universe defend itself against him. And that's more of what this is, and I think it works for that. But let me just say this other criticism that I do have. Um, okay, and this isn't necessarily your fault, but it's a bit problematic that instant transmission is a thing at the point in Dragon Ball Z that this happens. Because I don't know why Godzilla doesn't try to why Goku doesn't try to move Godzilla away from cities earlier. Why
Hmm.
why is that his last move, you know?
Well, I just
Because I don't know why in the first fight, because don't they use instant transmission? No, they don't use instant transmission to get there. They do fly there. But I don't know why Goku didn't just go, we should probably move this fight. I should just charge up to him and move him,
right.
you know?
Well, for one thing, the city had been abandoned. I made a point of that.
In the first fight though, I'm talking about.
Oh, at that point, I mean, yeah, he just didn't think about it. I mean, Goku
No, I get that. Yeah.
Goku gets swept up in the moment. That's what I always figure.
But
He gets swept up in the moment of like fighting an enemy. Like he's so pumped to do that. His whole Saiyan blood, after becoming a Super Saiyan, especially on Namek, his Saiyan blood is a lot more part of his character than it was pre-Namek, and so he really gets swept up in a fight. And I mean, how many of the villains in DBZ could he have defeated if he had just been like, why don't I just instant transmission them into the sun? Like
oh no, I totally.
he never
Yeah.
thinks of that. That's why I
Oh no,
actually
no, but I'm not even talking about just instant transmissioning him to somewhere where he could kill Godzilla. I'm just saying moving him to another place to fight, because I think it makes perfect sense for Goku to be swept up into the heat of the moment of the battle.
right,
But Goku always thinks about people's safety before that, like
right.
innocent bystanders. I mean, and one other problem that's in that first fight is that Goku is rather responsible for the deaths of those townspeople
Right. Well,
because he attacks Godzilla first.
many of them had run away. Uh,
Okay, I get that, but it wasn't like
I don't
as
know.
clear as the.
Yeah, I probably didn't make that abundantly clear, but
No, you didn't. No, 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 not at all. I thought that town was still fully stocked because you made such a big deal out of West City being evacuated that I thought you intentionally made it like people are still there and they're
okay.
getting
So
killed.
apparently I didn't
And I
make
was
that
like,
clear
this is
enough.
Goku's fault. Like a lot of them are dead and it's Goku's fault. Like at one point, when he launches the Kamehameha and knocks Godzilla down, like anybody who was under there is dead. Like
Yeah.
and there's no consideration of that. And I'm like, this is all. And again, Goku attacks Godzilla first. Godzilla doesn't attack Goku first, which kind of bugged me, but whatever, it's fine. It's a monster, so I think Goku's a bit more gung ho against something that's not like an intelligent, what he perceives as an intelligent being. So that's fine. I'm totally cool with that.
Hmm.
Um, but just the fact that he seems so Goku just seems to not think enough about the consequences of the battle, and that kind of bugged me. Um, but that's pretty much it in terms of my issues. Uh
I don't know if you noticed
also, why doesn't Goku instant transmission to Korin's tower, and why does he go to battles to West City?
because King Kai told him to go there.
Right,
It was
but if he
bad
needs to get a
planning. It was
sense,
bad planning on King Kai's part, really. And then after
yeah,
Goku and them get to West City, I mean, he's fucking out of it. They had to plug him into a machine for the majority of the. I needed the DBZ trope of Goku being out of the fight. It's the only reason I
yes,
needed him out of the fight. I had to have that trope.
yes,
Um,
I think at that point though you should have had it where Goku couldn't use instant transmission at all.
And then I came up with all kinds of great shit to do with the Yajirobe. So.
I know I love that element so much that like it kind of bugged me that I was like, well, why didn't he just instant transmission to Korin's palace in the first place? Why even go to West City first? Because he could have just gone there, gotten the sense of being, gone to West City, and everything would have been fine.
I did think of that upon this last rating. It's just because I needed that trope. Even though this was supposed to be a movie, I did want to use that trope.
No, I'm all for you doing that because that gives the other Z fighters the chance to fight Godzilla, and that gives Piccolo the chance to grow and fight Godzilla one-on-one without Goku's intervention.
The other thing is, I didn't just want this to be the Goku v Godzilla show. I did want to give the other Z fighters a chance to shine.
Absolutely.
Even Yamcha gets to do a thing in this fight.
He gets to do a great thing. Yamcha gets to be cocky against Godzilla. I loved that. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm very happy that trope was in there. It's nice to get that brought in from the movies. I just wish that we should have just had it where Goku just couldn't use it after fighting Godzilla the first time. He was so injured that he just couldn't even focus enough to use it. That's all we really had to do in that instance, you know.
Yeah.
But one last minor quib one. I don't even think this is an issue. This is just something that I think is debatable. I don't know how Krillin. I don't know how I feel about Krillin, like, because he kind of reacts to like having to go off and fight in like that kind of like abridged way of like, oh, this is gonna fucking suck. I don't want to do this. And I don't know if normal Krillin would have that extreme of a reaction. I don't know.
I think Krillin in the show is often very.
You think so?
I think he's often very. I mean, he'll go to the fight. Like
and he does.
He's gonna go help out his buddies, but I think he's always been like the one to worry about whether or not he's gonna make it out alive. I mean, he's the one on Namek that was freaking out and like picturing in his head what Frieza's fourth form was gonna look like, and he basically just pictured like a bigger version of 3 with like big nasty teeth and shit.
Right.
So, I don't think that was out of character for Krillin, or I didn't think that.
Oh no, I didn't think it was. Yeah, I just thought it was debatable. I just wanted to ask you about it. No. Just ask you if what you thought of that now. But yeah, no, I'm fine with it as well. I think it's funny. You know, it gives him a different. It instantly, like, he doesn't get much to do in this except for that awesome moment where he throws the Destructo disc at Godzilla. That was so cool, and it doesn't even phase him.
And it's like if there had been a Krillin owned count, it would have gone up one because.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I loved is that like you worked in that like it was such a subtle way to kind of like make. I don't even know if you did it intentionally, like kind of make a reference to DBZ Abridged in terms of like Krillin has a big triumphant moment. Because he's like, oh, maybe the monster's gonna run away, and then Godzilla just swats him away. I loved that, and then I loved the moment after it even more, where Piccolo's like, oh, dude, you're such a fucking idiot, but I can't let you die, and takes a massive bullet or loses an arm for Krillin's sake. I loved that. That was great.
There's not much for Piccolo to lose an arm. But.
By the way, you should write like a solo Piccolo fan fiction because your voice for Piccolo is not only spot on, but I think better than Toriyama's in some instances.
I always wanted.
You are so good writing Piccolo.
I so wanted to write this scene where he rips off his arm and grows into him, and it's one of the most iconic things that Piccolo does.
Yeah, I love that you worked it in there.
The only thing I wish I could have worked in is some stretchy arm business. Oh wait, I think I actually did because he pulls Gohan down into the forest at the beginning. I don't think I made it clear in the prose that he did that with the stretchy arms, but I always imagined him like.
No, I got that.
I always imagined him hiding down in the forest and using the stretchy arms to grab Gohan. So yeah, I did.
That's just like, what? Where'd he go?
I did use that as a matter of fact, and it was so hard because there were even more characters that I wish I could have worked in here somewhere, but it would have just become bloated. Like I would have loved to cut at some point to Kami and Mr. Popo, or.
Yo, no Master Roshi in this. I was crushed.
There's no Roshi.
Because I thought he was in this for some reason, and then I was crushed to see that he wasn't in here. Upon reading it this last time.
Yeah, there's no Roshi. He's probably on the island getting high with the turtle. I don't know. It's.
I mean, I buy that, but I wanted like a moment of him watching it on TV, smoking his joint, just going, "Heh, glad we're not there, turtle."
I never got to put Chi Chi in the story, although I did mention her a couple times, so that was good.
Oh no,
Um,
your reference to Chi Chi was more than enough. I was actually glad you didn't put her in, just
yeah.
because I thought that that would have made like she was referenced so many times and for such hilarious reasons that I thought it was enough. I thought that that was perfect. I thought it was
And
great.
I gave Bulma because Bulma is the second character in DBZ the second female character in DBZ who's famous for like going on angry rampages at times. I gave her a big Chi Chi moment at one point
Yeah,
when
definitely.
Yajirobe. How did you what did you think of the marvelous misadventures of Yajirobe, which is sort of a
It is.
which is a huge side plot in this story?
I wish I could comfortably say it was my favorite element, but I can't because the battles that you wrote with Godzilla are so creative that I can't like discount those as being like the best part.
Yeah, I
But
don't think
God, they're funny and creative and inventive.
I couldn't I can't call it the best part either, but but as the person who wrote it, I definitely had the most fun with Yajirobe's bits.
Because
Um,
it reminded me of writing like when I wrote like the dialogue between Ichinose and Shinzu in the first issue because I had so much fun with that, like writing them as being witty because their personalities are so different. They play off each other in interesting ways.
yeah.
And you really seem to have fun doing that here in terms of like just having fun with Yajirobe's lazy, easily scared, easily, like feeling defeated personality
Yeah,
up
even
against this dinosaur chasing him in the midst of a Godzilla attack. I found that like parallel very funny. When he's hiding under that rock,
even though in the
hiding from the dinosaur, I thought that was great. And
even
he's like,
though
"Oh, just fuck this, I'm done."
even though in the actual series Yajirobe is actually way stronger than you might imagine, and if he had actually trained, he could have been like super, like he could have been a huge asset in DBZ if he hadn't been so fucking lazy. Because when he first shows up in Dragon Ball, he's like as strong as Goku at that point, if not
Oh yeah,
strong.
definitely.
Um,
I mean, Goku's like a bit like, "Oh, I shouldn't have stolen this guy's breakfast."
but he got relegated to being a comic relief character in Z, so that was definitely the mold that I had to use him in.
I think he works better in that mold though. Like he serves.
Yeah,
He's so good in that. Like Yajirobe is one of my favorite characters in DBZ, and
yeah.
he seems to be obviously yours as well because you gave him such a great subplot in here. And Dylan, what I like about that subplot as well. Now let me ask you: did you base this movie sort of structurally on Cooler's Revenge more than anything else? Because that's the sense I got. And
The whole
Yajirobe's subplot
the
to me
whole
came off as like sort of inspired by Gohan's in that.
the whole the whole thing about Goku being injured and needing to get a sensu bean to him definitely comes from Cooler's Revenge. Yeah, not necessarily Yajirobe subplot. I didn't even go into the story planning to write Yajirobe subplot. That idea sort of came to me organically. Um,
I love it when shit like that happens. Yeah, it works great though. I mean, the best moment is definitely when you just have Bulma shoot the fucking thing in the head,
yeah,
because that's hilarious. Because here you have this insanely strong martial artist who's having this epic struggle with this dinosaur. He's done some damage to it too. That's what I love about what you threw in.
he
He
es-
does some
he
damage.
escapes it riding an ostrich chicken, which is a real
That was so cool too. Like you just added so many interesting, funny caveats to it. And again, I love that you made Yajirobe able to fight back and having done some damage.
which is a real animal from DBZ. The ostrich chickens. They're the ones that the farmer had in the field when Raditz killed him at the
Yep.
beginning of DBZ.
Oh God, my marijuana patch.
Um, so yeah, I don't even know why. I don't even know how that idea came to me. Honestly, I was like, I should put an ostrich chicken in this somewhere, and it did.
But I think when I first read this when you first wrote this, that was the thing I said to you was the Bulma Yajirobe moment is like the best part. Like that's my favorite moment. It's hysterical. I laughed
Yells
out
at
loud when I first read that.
She yells at him for playing with dinosaurs.
Such a like I think you mentioned this before. You getting the voices for the characters right is not even a question. You did it perfectly.
Mm.
Um, Goku, King Kai, Gohan sounds spot on. I like how you kept it consistent with the show. He calls Goku Daddy, which is good. At this point anyway, he calls him Dad later. When he gets older. But no, I think you did a great job at that. The only one who I think may have been a bit off was Vegeta,
Really?
because Vegeta at this point is very. This is Vegeta before he becomes a bit softer. I mean, he's been on Earth and everything, so he's a bit softer than he was on Namek, but
Which
this
is
is still like bloodthirsty Vegeta.
yeah. And his opening in this story
He's killing people,
is
and
him
but
surrounded by dead people and then
he's.
killing one more guy.
I think
Um,
he's too nice to Goku though when he pops up though.
that's I don't know. They
Because this
don't
is still Vegeta at the point where he's like the only reason I'm saving him is because I don't want him to die so I can kill him. I wish that you had made that, put that line, or put that kind of line in there somewhere, where it's like, if anybody's gonna kill Goku, it's me.
Yeah, I could probably work that in. Um,
But he just felt like he felt a bit too much like the Boo era Vegeta to me.
so you think I sort of accidentally mixed those two versions of Vegeta, because the scene with him at the alien outpost I feel is definitely Android Saga Vegeta.
Oh no, I think I think you did that fine, but I just think once he pops up in the battle, he's not being a dick to Trunks like I think he would be. He's just not enough of a dick to me.
Right. Well, he doesn't.
But I don't think you had enough time to throw that in either. I don't think that the context of what you had gave you the chance to bring that in. So
Right.
I don't know if it's really an issue. It just jumped out to me because it felt like I was watching two or reading two different Vegetas, from the scene with him and Euclides in space to the scene with him fighting Godzilla on
Because
Earth.
that was
I
another.
don't I don't think it's a huge issue. It's just something that jumped out to me.
That was another trope that I was sort of taking from the DBZ movies. In the early movies, it's always Piccolo. In the later movies, it's sometimes Piccolo, sometimes Vegeta. There's always a moment where one of the badass characters just shows up out of the blue to like save the day or help save the day or something like that. Trying to think of a good example. Well, the way Piccolo shows up in Return of Cooler to kick Henchman ass.
Oh, you mean Cooler's Revenge?
Is that what I said? Did I say Return
You
of Cooler?
said you said Return. You said Return of Cooler.
That's
It's
that's what
fucking confusing.
that's what Vegeta does in that movie. He shows up to help kick ass and it does
Yeah,
so
yeah,
well.
yeah. Vegeta gets the badass entrance to that. Piccolo gets it in the other one. Piccolo got them in the four before that, and then Vegeta took that spot after.
I actually had two of those moments in the story because I gave Trunks a badass entrance and I also gave Vegeta a badass entrance in the fight.
Hmm. What I liked about this story as well, and again, I think that your voice for Piccolo is so good that you should just write like a fucking whole series about him, because
Piccolo
I like.
movie
Oh, stop! Because
starring
in
guy from
this,
Buffy. No,
you. Oh, no, no, no! He could do an amazing job.
in
Fuck you, he'd
in
be great.
in actual good makeup.
Yeah, yeah, great. He's a good choice for Piccolo, just not King Piccolo number one
I
for
recently
like actual Piccolo.
recently found out that he originally didn't want to take the role because he didn't know if he could, because he was actually a fan of the series and
Yeah, he
he
was.
didn't know if he could pull it off. Um,
A lot of the Buffy people were DBZ fans. Like I think I told you when I got to that point in Buffy where there was like a super specific Dragon Ball Z reference where a villainous character who had turned to the good side was describing to Buffy how he was like the Vegeta to her Goku, because now he fought alongside her, even though one time they tried to kill each other.
nice.
Uh, it was great. I was geeking out so much. And then I told you about the moment where, like, oh, there was a 98 reference in Buffy where they talked about how 98 wasn't Godzilla.
I had a
And I'm
similar.
just like,
I had a
oh,
similar.
that's so cool. That show's so great.
There was a similar moment for me watching Jew Ranger when in one episode Bandora is reading Journey to the West and she like cusses out Son Goku, like she says him by name because originally he's from that story. Um, but just seeing
Yes.
Bandora say Son Goku in like subtitles, like I remember watching that moment, I was like, oh, um,
I know, right? I had that moment when I finally got to that as well when I was watching Jew Ranger. Um, but all right, so why don't we get back into issue 2 though of Odyssey? So I've talked a lot though. I feel like I've kind of taken things away from you a bit. So why don't you talk about your sort of take on this now, going back and reading it? I feel like I took a lot of the attention away from you. I'm sorry.
mm, I don't know, man.
Because I really like it.
Ultimately, I don't think there's anything really that sticks out and like really like bugs me about it. That's why I was hoping that maybe you would have something to bring up in that regard. I think it works.
I feel like I got really negative too. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, no,
I like this a lot, and it
good,
just I
good.
just I had those couple of qualms that I wanted to make sure I brought up because we're rewriting these, and I think that they should be addressed.
One thing that I've noticed going back and reading it, and this is just because I have a broader knowledge base than I did 2 years ago concerning the different versions of DBZ. This story only works from a Funimation dub perspective, because Goku's characterization, the whole crux of the ending is them pointing out the fact that Goku like has this knack of like noticing like good traits in people, and like and that's something that isn't really done in the original versions of. That's something that comes up through his characterization in the Funimation dubs. The entire way that he's characterized in this story, and it's just because I was only familiar with that version at the time of writing it. His entire characterization in this story is very much just out of the Funimation dubs. Um,
But I don't know if but that element in particular, the specific dialogue wise, definitely. I hear only the Funimation actors when I read this, and
Yes.
it's not just because those are the ones that I hear whenever I read anything Dragon Ball.
There are
It's because
there are a couple times
you're writing the dialogue with that vernacular in mind.
there are a couple times where I hear abridged voices just because I'm more used to those now, sadly. Like at first I was
That's interesting.
at first when I was because I've watched a lot of abridged recently, and it's been a long time since it's been a while since I've actually uh, been watching the actual show. Recently, whenever I've watched like DBZ, it's been the abridged shit. Um,
I feel that. No, that makes sense.
and because I've got to get the last two DVD box sets for the last two seasons, I don't have them yet. There's a big empty space on my shelf. Anyway,
That's sad.
it is. But at first when I was
We
reading
should
this,
start a Kickstarter to get you those DVDs.
yeah, I need to buy those.
People will be touched by your sad story. You can make a sad video just like, "Hello everyone, my name is Dillion McCandless. I do not own the last two seasons of Dragon Ball
I
Z
gotta
on
get
DVD."
those, and
How fucking sad is
then
that?
I gotta buy all five seasons of Dragon Ball, and those movies, and that one GT box set that has all three seasons in it, just because I want to own it.
Yeah, I gotta. I don't own like any of DB. I don't really own any of Dragon Ball on DVD. I have the last three episodes of Dragon Ball Z on DVD, and that's about it. Everything else I kind of have on VHS and by other means. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Anyway, at first when I was reading this, there was a
yeah.
moment. There was a moment where Gohan was talking, and I was hearing the abridged voice for some reason. But then once I got into Goku's dialogue, I tuned right back into the Sean Schemmel voice, and from that point on, everybody's voices were where they were supposed to be. But there was just a moment at the beginning where I was like hearing the abridged voices in my head. It was just a weird experience that I had while reading it this last time.
I gotcha. Now, when you wrote it, did you have an issue reconciling between regular DBZ or, canon DBZ and abridged at all in terms of like stuff that you maybe wanted to write in that you sort of liked from abridged, or did you have any trouble reconciling that in your mind, or did you just kind of you knew your tried and true DBZ and you
Yeah,
just stuck
yeah.
with that?
At that point, I was very tuned into to specifically Funimation Dragon Ball Z. um,
And I think at that time, maybe not both of us, but one of us had like just rewatched the Android Saga.
right. I'm
I
not.
think it was you because I think I did it the year before that. Like around the time that we did the DBZ movie reviews is when I think I rewatched that.
Mhm.
Um, and I think I think that may have played into your enthusiasm at writing it in that era. I don't really necessarily remember that specifically though, but I just remembered another problem actually,
Oh,
if you don't mind me bringing it
no,
up.
please do because I
Uh,
rereading it. I don't know if it's just because I'm too close to it, but rereading it, I see like last month you read yours and you like had all these. You were like, oh, I don't think it works for this reason, and I'm
that had been a long time coming though. I always knew I was gonna say that stuff.
but I am very bad at trying to critique my own work.
Mm.
I'm always very unsure of my own work, but I'm very bad at critiquing it. So when I reread through it, I'm just like, I don't know. I think it works. Cause who am I to say it doesn't work? Like I'm not the audience. I'm the fucking guy who wrote it. You know what I mean? Um,
But what is you enjoy reading it though? You get a satisfaction from reading it because I definitely had that with like I was able to kind of separate myself as the writer. I mean, we wrote it so long ago. I was able to separate myself as the writer from the first issue and just kind of go, well, what am I enjoying reading as the audience here?
right.
And I did enjoy a lot of it. I enjoyed all of the dialogue between Ishinose and Shinzu and a lot of the ideas present and a lot of the way I described certain things and everything and a lot of the different ways I played with the universe. Um, but I was also able to kind of go, well, from an audience point of view, these are the parts that I'm having a hard time getting through that are a slog to get through, and I was able to sort of reconcile that. But just to say the other problem I had with this, and this is something that we didn't like get into an argument about, but this is something we debated about like when you first wrote this, and that was whether or not the hierarchy are aware of the end villain of the entire story, of the entire Godzilla Odyssey ongoing narrative. And we had sort of had a disagreement about whether or not they should, because I felt that they should be completely unaware of his existence and have it be a total reveal at the end, where you thought they should have him like have a knowledge of him as a lingering
In
threat.
my opinion, they would have always known because aren't they the reason? And this is really weird because this is the one thing about the series that I don't want to spoil until we get to
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
those
We should
videos.
save the villain for the very end, yeah.
Um, but aren't they the reason that he's in his particular predicament to begin with?
I didn't remember that as of this current moment. I believe you. And if so, then that makes
Because
perfect
to me, it
sense.
only makes sense that they would be the ones to put him in his current predicament.
No. That definitely. Although I thought that we had discussed his origins differently, we clearly have to have this conversation off recording now. But
Right.
I do think that that's something that we should discuss a lot more when we talk about it, just because it comes off as very almost like. And I guess it's okay since this is since this is in the DBZ universe and everything's supposed to be more over the top, but this part isn't in the DBZ universe, so maybe it doesn't work. It feels very like unintentionally Saturday morning cartoon of them to talk about the end all be all villain as like he with each other and not just use his name, you
Right.
know? And
It's all because
it's over the top,
we're
it's all
saving that.
ethereal.
It's all because we're saving that reveal for the end, though. Is the only
I know, but it's
so
very
so
obvious.
pronouns are our friends. So
I know. It bugs me just because they're only talking to each other and they all know who they're talking about. So it kind of strikes me as like avoiding it for no reason. So
mm,
I think that we definitely need to streamline that element of it and streamline
mm,
like again, we need to plan out the hierarchy's role in this whole thing just overall better, because I just think it's a bit sort of uncertain in this, and it was obviously very uncertain in terms of the overarching narrative. But that's a debatable thing. It's between us, obviously, because we have to figure out what we want to do with it overall. I don't think it's necessarily a big problem in terms of this story. The only problem I think it creates is that it's just very silly in that one scene for them to talk about it that way.
right.
And I think that tonally, it's not inconsistent with everything else, but it's just, I think it makes your writing sound a bit sillier than it actually is. You know what I mean?
Right. I don't
So
know.
I think that that's just the only issue it creates.
I don't know that there's much we could do about it, but I know what you mean. Just
Well,
because.
no, given what we have here, there's nothing you can do about it. But
Right.
I just think that that's something we need to discuss in the future.
Right. And let me ask you about the ending,
Hmm.
because I had to get a little creative. Obviously, I couldn't have Goku kill Godzilla,
Right?
which is the direction he was headed. Um,
You would have too.
he would have, yes. It was the classic spirit bomb trope. Another movie trope. Actually, one that kind of pisses me off in a lot of the movies because I think the spirit bomb is overused. But in this case, I thought it was literally the only way that he could even conceive of getting out of it. But obviously, I couldn't have Goku kill Godzilla. And I couldn't have him hit Godzilla with a spirit bomb and then Godzilla come back afterwards, because that would be stretching it way too far. I had already had to, in order to make the fight interesting, sort of stretch the boundaries of what Godzilla was capable of. Um,
Yeah, especially with the regeneration at the beginning, because there's no way he could actually do that.
yeah, and I tried to explain it as like they feel his key level like drop really low, so I tried to explain it as like him pouring his atomic energy into the healing process to sort of speed.
No, I got that. Yeah.
It's
But
just
that's way quicker than it's ever been explained working in any other continuity. Because
yeah,
in 2000 where
that's true.
Regenerator G1 is introduced,
I had to do a little
they
bit of
say that it takes hours.
I had to give him a little bit of a hulkish version of the regenerator.
It's very like but it's more like modern Wolverine, where it's like he can get hit with a nuclear bomb and in a couple of panels he's fine again.
Yeah. It's actually another callback to Dragon Ball Z, because in the Garlic Jr. saga, Gohan, in one of his angry moments, like plows through Garlic Jr. Like he flies through him in a way very similar to what Kid Goku did to King Piccolo. And there's this big gaping hole in Garlic Jr.'s midsection, and then it just heals up because, of course, Garlic Jr. is immortal. Um,
Right.
so it's actually a subtle callback.
But yeah, no,
But yeah, the
it
ending.
bugged me when I read it here, just because I was like, again, I think that makes our Godzilla seem a bit too unkillable. But again, I get why you did it. It makes sense. I think it's understandable. That's something that we'll fix in the future.
But my question for you for the ending:
Yeah,
do you feel like it's a tad sudden and maybe it sort of deflates the drama a little bit?
I think it's a very deflated, dramatic ending. I like it though.
I
I
I
I have two.
couldn't conceive of any other way of ending it was the problem. And I do really like the moment at the end right before Goku goes back to Earth where he asks Euclides what the creature's name is. That's a badass moment. I fucking love it.
I think that's a great way to end it. I think the deflation though is not your fault only because we put this arbitrary time limit on how long Godzilla was in each universe. It was completely
Yeah,
unnecessary.
definitely gonna
I don't
change.
know what we were thinking,
Definitely gonna change
because
that line.
we had such a perfect dramatic out for it too. I had it in the first issue where I described what exactly is going on when Godzilla travels from universe to universe, where the villain of the series, oh, I guess that's the spoiler, but some force grabs him from limbo, rips him out, and then him entering the Showa Godzilla universe is him being dropped. So all you have to explain is just when it's just when he can is when this force can and cannot grab Godzilla and get him back.
Yeah,
So that could happen anytime.
we don't need
There's no time limit
we don't need a
necessary.
24-hour time
Doesn't
limit.
doesn't have to be explained at all, and it's perfect for the story because we can have it happen whenever the drama seems like it's building towards a reasonable conclusion, or whatever you want to end it, you can just have it happen. It's the perfect way out.
The lucky thing about it is I didn't like explain the 24-hour time limit in this. I just had Euclides like vaguely mention it, so I can easily rewrite that line
Oh
to
yeah, definitely.
exclude that. The more problem I sort of have, or I don't even see it as a problem. My question was if it is a problem, is that kind of an anticlimax, and it sort of had to be. I mean, the story sort of necessitated an anticlimax, I think.
Given your limits, not being able to kill Godzilla, and I think that's also just an issue of
Like if this had just been like a one and done story about a DBZ movie where Godzilla shows up, then yeah, Goku would have killed him right then and there. That would have been the end. Roll credits. But since this is part of
right,
this larger story, I couldn't do that. Um,
right. And it's always weird to have two franchises cross over and have one kill the other, because it seems disrespectful to the other franchise, and you don't want to piss off like fans in that way. Although you'd probably be fine with it. So, I would like to
all right, yeah.
I'd like to see you write a Godzilla DBZ fan fiction off the chain, like Dillion McCandless Unchained, where Goku just like rips out Godzilla's intestines and strangles him with them or something, or
Oh, yeah. Fucking Super
something along
Saiyan
those
God
lines.
Goku just like kicks his head
Just
like a volleyball, makes a fucking field goal.
Godzilla doesn't even get to have a chance. Yeah, no, definitely.
Just
I think it
just
works fine
rakes
with
his
what you were
corpse.
given though.
Um,
It's you know what though, Dylan too. It's so short, and maybe this is also a problem as well. I think that Euclides' interaction with Goku could have been a bit more developed. Um, I don't know how I feel about Goku just going like, nah, I kind of have all the basics. I figured it all out. I would have liked two of them had more of a conversation. It seems like Goku's maybe figured out more than he would have. I mean, it makes sense what he does piece together. I buy that he could, given the information he has.
right.
But maybe just for the sake of making the conversation a bit more interesting, it would have been better to have Euclides and him kind of figure things out together. That's also a good opportunity to have them kind of discuss the parallels between their characters and Goku and Godzilla's character, because you did that, and you did that in a really cool way to not have Goku kill Godzilla.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do definitely think that there's a bit of an issue to it, but I also like the idea of like Goku and Euclides appreciating Godzilla together.
Hmm.
I think that Euclides' appreciation of Godzilla needed to be more developed. That's not your fault. That's ours together for not developing that first and then having you write this story.
Right.
Um,
Oh, well, and the
but
other idea is that that would sort of be developed as the series goes on. You have to remember, of course, that this is only a first appearance for Euclides. He's still very much mysterious in this issue. We know what the mission is that he's been given by the hierarchy, but we don't know a whole lot about him and what his motivations are. Um,
we know why he looks the way he does,
yeah,
which is nice.
we know that.
And I love the
That's about
scene
it.
that you wrote between him and the hierarch council. That was great. I love how he describes how all the other hierarchy members have chosen forms of pure light, which was all of the specific descriptions of stuff in this was Dylan's idea. So
Yeah,
give
because
him all the credit for that.
we didn't like spell out what the hierarchy was. I mean, well, we knew what
That was the most undercooked element of the entire narrative, certainly.
we knew what they were. We didn't like think about, hey, what do they look like, and like what, and so I just sort of wrote around it. I mean, we came up with the idea that they could choose their form at will, and so I turned that into like an element to describe the hierarchy's pompousness because they choose to remain in their true form and they see themselves as being above taking what they would consider to be lesser forms.
Customizable forms. Euclides, of course, he decides to look like a superhero because he's into that.
Yeah.
And now I do think we should also take some time and figure out, well, what superheroes does Euclides idolize so much? Um, and we can work that into developing his specific
We
personality.
could make that a plot point in issue number 7.
Indeed. Indeed, indeed, indeed. It's. I mean, there's one in particular that I think he kind of has to idolize, and I think it'll be interesting when they meet. So,
I think it'll be like in Civil War when Paul Rudd meets Captain America,
yes, it'll be just like that. That's what I'm thinking.
or when Spider-Man meets everybody.
When Spider-Man meets Captain America, when everybody meets Captain America in the Marvel universe, it's always like, "Oh, Captain America!" And I mean, he's kind of like the character that we're sort of dancing around referring to, so it makes sense. Um, but yeah, no, I think that you I don't think that the ending is your fault. I
Right.
think that you worked well with what you had, and I think the ending is cool given what you had. So don't beat yourself too much over anything. I just think that
Yeah.
it's problematic given the way we wrote the series initially, and I just think that it'll be very easy to fix in the future. And I think that it's cool enough as it
And
is.
I don't think it's necessarily dissatisfying because
No,
there's been tons of satisfaction in the fight leading up to it. I mean, I destroyed it. I destroyed a city. I had like
you
Piccolo.
destroyed two cities.
Well, one of them was a crappy little village. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. And one of them was like a
They
city,
didn't matter.
city. Um,
Right.
but I had like Piccolo, Growing Giant, and I had I gave all the DBZ characters moments to shine, except Tien and Chaozu, because I was like, what the fuck am I gonna do with Tien and Chaozu?
No, I thought you did okay because Tian got a moment to save Chaozu. I like that Chaozu was the first one to go down in the fight.
Yeah, I thought that
I mean, it's obvious, but like I liked that they had a moment, that they had a moment to do with anything whatsoever.
yeah, there's always Tien and Chaozu's thing is sort of got your back, bro, and like so that was really the only thing he gets to do in it is save Chaozu. I probably could have worked in a solar flare or something for him. Um,
Oh yeah, Solar Flare would have made sense. There was no use of Solar Flare in this, which is something I think they would definitely use against Godzilla. Although it probably wouldn't work because Godzilla's eyes have to be crazy sensitive to, have to be crazy like able to, you know, deal with light because of he fires pure atomic radiation out of his
I,
mouth, and it in and of itself is blinding.
I don't even
So it he
I
has
don't
to
know
be
it.
pretty able to sustain it. Like you know what? It might be interesting if in the when we rewrite these, you have it where they use the solar flare on him and thinking it's gonna work, and it does nothing. Like that might be fun.
Yeah. I might be able to work that in there. Um, of course, I had the obligatory DBZ villain destroys an army scene, which is
Yeah.
one of my favorite things that Perfect Cell ever did. And the way I described it in this story is pretty much just modeled after the Perfect Cell episode where he destroys the army. Basically, they just fire everything they have at him, and then he's like, "Okay," and then he destroys them. um,
Yeah. I think that I'm not saying cut that scene, but it felt a bit like mechanical.
mm.
And I mean, I liked the way it was played, where Yamcha's like fucking idiots. Like that was great.
Yeah.
That was really
Because
funny.
there's always a moment. We had a little bit of it in the Saiyan saga too. There's always moments where the humans are like desperately trying to defend themselves from the DBZ villains, and just
Yeah,
failing at it miserably. Um,
definitely. But I think you had so much other fan service going on, and so much other like really interesting stuff going on, that and the Yajirobe subplot, that scene I just felt kind of like it feels like he's kind of writing this almost because he feels like he has to,
mm,
and not so much like you really wanted to do that moment. But I don't know. That was just my interpretation of it now, 2 years later. It doesn't sound like it's accurate, so fair enough. I think it still works, and I get why you put it in there. So
right.
I feel like I've been very negative against your work tonight, bro. I'm sorry. I
Ah,
feel like
no, it's cool. It's cool. Uh, I mean, last month we tore yours a new one. So,
yeah,
um,
but I too remind a new one in that you were very nice and very like supportive throughout most of it, and in this I'm like, Dylan, you fucking suck, bro. I feel like our dynamic has weirdly switched from the usual in a weird way.
um,
But no, again, I still think that your effort was better than mine anyway. So you know, definitely props for that, bro.
trying to think if I have anything else specific to ask.
No,
Um,
I've pretty much said everything that I was gonna say. I think we've covered almost every scene. So,
mhm, mhm, mhm.
so
Obviously, I had to write in a way for future Trunks to gain information about what had happened to West
oh yeah, so he
City.
talks to the old person. Yeah,
Yeah. Did that fit in okay?
I liked that. I liked that. It felt a bit like It felt a bit superfluous just because I wish Trunks would have learned something in that scene that would have been helpful in the battle. He really didn't. It was just kind of like, well, here's what happened. So that really the only thing he learned was that he had to go back and help, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I
it was sort of a moment where he was like, and then he like starts telling Trunks the story, and then we cut to what he's telling him actually taking place.
That was cool. That was a great parallel edit in a
There
sense.
was a similar
Uh,
moment where like Bulma looks out a window. It's just like, where the hell is Yajirobe? And at the very next line of the first of this, or the very next sentence of the next paragraph is under a rock.
yeah, no, that's fantastic. I love stuff like that. That's clever writing. Um, but what was I saying before that though? Because I was trying to make a point.
Um,
I don't remember.
mm,
I don't remember at all. I like it though, Dylan. It's good stuff. It's good
all right,
stuff.
man. Good,
Um,
good.
so, so Dylan, is there anything else you wanted to ask as the writer? Anything else you wanted to add? Because this is the last time we're going to talk about it, ever. No.
I'm trying to think, but I mean, I think we've covered everything, haven't we?
Yeah, and we're about at the same time length as we were last time, so I do think that we should wrap up anyway, especially since
Um,
this issue is shorter than the last one. So
think you think Gohan's freak out moment works because he always has a freak out moment.
I love that you put that in. I love that an attempt at one in the beginning. Like you had Chekhov's gun in the form of Gohan in this, which I thought was fun.
Yeah,
That he almost had the anger moment at first in the
because I
first
always
battle,
wanted him to
and then
do
he
that.
got to have it in the second one.
I always wanted him to do that in the second battle, but I knew that given what he had just seen happen to Goku in the first battle, his first reaction would be to have one. And so I was like, well, how can I have him not have one? And so I had Piccolo to sort of talk him down off the ledge.
No, I love that. I thought that was great. All right then.
I can't think of anything else specific to bring up. So,
All right. Well, as
oh,
always, the
oh,
story. Oh, okay.
I was gonna say something about multiverses earlier.
Oh, okay.
This still could conceivably work, and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
The way the multiverses have been working so far in Dragon Ball Super is really fucking weird, okay? Because during the Universe 6 arc, they're fighting on this planet, and it's said that it occupies neutral space between Universes 6 and 7. And I'm like, for there to be neutral space, does that mean that in the Dragon Ball Z version of what a multiverse is, you can just fly past the borders of your own universe and go into the next one? Because that seems to be the implication when you say that there's neutral space in between them, that you could just like cross the neutral space and go into the next universe. So I think the way Toriyama has defined the 12 universes in his series, they're like connected in a way that you could like travel from one to the other. So they're not really separate dimensions like what we have going on with
Right.
Odyssey, and that could just be complete bullshit. But that's how I'm.
We're
That's
but his almost seems more like a straight space thing. It almost seems like the universes are galaxies in a bigger universe in what you're describing.
yeah.
And ours is a lot more of a completely different plane of existence thing.
Yeah. So I think it still can work.
Ours is more metafictional than Toriyama's, it sounds like.
Yeah, because the whole time, ever since in Battle of Gods, they were like, there are 12 universes. I was like, great, well, now issue 2 of Godzilla Odyssey is fucking in continuity with everything
Yeah.
before Battle of Gods, but anything after that, it can't fucking work. But now, with the way
Yeah.
the universes have been working in DB Super, right now, I think it can work if you do a little bit of mental gymnastics. Um,
Definitely.
so
No,
that's
that's
all I wanted to say to that end.
definitely. No, that definitely makes sense. And overall, I think that whatever this doesn't line up with canon wise is negligible, and also, it's explained away by Godzilla's messing around with the multi-dimensional fabric of reality anyway.
Right,
So I
right,
think
right.
it all works out rather well. I think
And
the
at the
fun
end of
of
the
this issue
series,
greatly outweighs any quandaries that you can have with it logic
and I
wise.
won't describe what it is because that would be getting into spoilers for the finale, and we want to avoid that. But one thing that we had going forward with the series is we can change anything in the continuities of the franchises that we're going into, because at the end of Godzilla Odyssey, there's a big reset button.
Right. So you could have had one of the Z fighters die, and it would have been fine.
It would have been fucking okay. I could have killed Krillin. I should
Yep.
have killed Krillin. No,
You definitely should have killed Krillin. Always kill Krillin.
always kill Krillin.
That's a motto I want put on a T-shirt. That is going to be the Dylan. You know what?
That's
That's our
worth.
sign off. That's our sign off for this podcast from now
especially
on.
especially if you,
Always kill Krillin.
especially if you want Goku to have a freak out moment. So
If you want Goku to advance to another level of Super Saiyan, you fucking murder Krillin.
always kill Krillin.
So, indeed.
I
So
just realized
Dylan, with
this episode will actually earn that Garlic Jr. music that you're fond of using.
indeed, the intro for this will probably be a bit more advanced than the last one because I actually have the pings to work with now, so I can.
And you didn't even use the best part of the Garlic Jr. music though. The best part is
Which,
the dun 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 dun, and
well,
you just used all the doo 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 part.
well, because that's more ethereal and more interdimensional. That part's all dramatic and
Yeah,
shit,
I
and
get where you're going. I understood the choice, but man, listening to it on that first video, I was like, oh, it's about to get to the good part, and then we started talking. I was like, no, fuck me, I want to hear the music.
I actually cut that part intentionally though because I didn't think it lined up with what we were looking at. So
Yeah, it's true.
I pissed you off on purpose.
Yeah.
He stuck up the finger at me like a true friend. All right, Dylan. So that's gonna
All
do
day,
it for
every day.
our retrospective of Godzilla Odyssey issue 2, and it's a miracle I haven't killed myself yet, kids. But so as always, stories in the description. Go read it for yourself to have your own thoughts, of course, and be sure to like the Godzilla Odyssey page on Facebook for all the content of the series, including, as we mentioned before, to get episodes of this show first. One day before they go up, and you can go like our page on MySpace to get it a full 2 days before it goes up. Don't do that. You will be disappointed. So, Dylan, before we head out, why don't you tell us, or at least give us a tease, of where Godzilla is going to be going next? Because this begins a bit of a new trend for this show for us. And also, we'll probably make the episodes a bit longer. This one is about 10 minutes longer than the last one. But the show will probably get a bit longer from now on, because from this point going forward, we don't have full scripts written out for each individual issue. We just have, in most cases, rough concepts, and in the case of the next issue, we have a rough outline. So that'll certainly be giving us a new direction to go in. For the next one, it won't be as sort of, open to us coming up with stuff on the fly for each issue in terms of discussing what could we do with these concepts, because we have such a stingent outline. So it'll be mostly us just discussing what we were going to do with certain things and where certain things were going to go.
This is where
But from this point on,
this is where it gets super interesting for the audience and not just us lamenting over our work.
Lamenting over our work, over what we created 2 years ago, because now we have to go, well, we wanted to do this 2 years ago, how do we make this work now?
Right.
And
Now,
I think that'll be interesting.
If you're a fan of the Facebook page, you already know what the third issue was supposed to be, because we released the promo image back when it was supposed to come out. But next time, join us next time as Godzilla crosses into the wonderful universe of Pacific Rim.
Indeed. And all of the a crossover that has been talked about to officially happen for a couple of years now. I don't think it ever will, kids. I think that's all bullshit and is a bad idea anyway. But it's a great idea in our case, because multiple dimensions, multiple times and space.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's perfect.
Now
so
this one is interesting because we did have a plot planned out for this one. We just never actually wrote anything. So in this one we can like sort of go through the plot with you guys and spitball some ideas as we're doing it.
To make the thing a bit more cohesive as a narrative. Now, also, I should mention this.
We'll get to show you some original kaiju that we designed specifically for that issue. It's gonna be
it's so sick.
It's gonna be a lot of fun, you guys. When I say we, I mean me. But
I came up with like one of the names, and then we ended up hating it anyway and changing it like recently. So
yeah, and I don't even remember.
I did my best.
I don't even remember what the fuck we changed it to.
I don't remember what the new one is. I remember the old one, but I don't remember the new one.
Yeah. God.
We'll talk about that next time, though. But I should also mention this because it is certainly important because it's going to come up later as well. This is also the first time we ever collaborated with another SOS member to help come up with the plot for one of these, because Dylan and I
doubt we'll be able to get him in the actual episode about this next issue, just because
that's not going to happen.
Just because it's impossible to get him to show up for anything. I'm of course referring to Gorsard, who helped us.
David, the legendary David,
who at the time helped us come up with the plot for this.
He did. He was on the Skype call when we came up with the rough plot, and he has a far more comprehensive knowledge of the Pacific Rim universe than we do, and is much more like interested in finding out a lot of the detail. For Pacific Rim, I saw the movie twice, and that was it. That was my entire working knowledge of that universe. So I thought it would be a good idea to get somebody in there who is a bit more passionate about it and a bit more knowledgeable about it than the two of us. So I think that definitely helped, and you'll be able to judge that for yourself when next we meet next month, when Godzilla's journey through the multiverse continues, his Odyssey continues, and he ends up in the Pacific Rim universe. So until next time, everyone, I'm Bill Worster, aka Zazubaar.
Oh, I'm Super DM64.
And just fucking kill Krillin, everybody. He
Always,
doesn't matter.
always
Just
kill Krillin.
fucking kill Krillin.
Tries to take down a 250-foot tall dinosaur with a Destructo disc. Just always kill Krillin.
Just kill Krillin, kids. Just kill Krillin. Good night, everyone.